Hello everyone, this is the Ravens Librarian. I will be discussing the third episode of the One Piece live action adaptation. As per previous videos, I'll try to keep spoilers regarding things that happen after the episode that I'm covering, and especially things that are outside of the adaptation and outside of this part of the story, to as little as possible, zero if possible. If I make a mistake, keep in mind that I will be covering it as someone who has seen the anime and the manga, and so I'll be doing mostly a comparison to the differences and just my overall reaction to it. So if that's something that's interesting, welcome. If not, please don't mind. Go on with your day. So on episode 3, continuing the trend of the previous episodes, we get substantial changes, but we also get important consistencies to the original stories. So major changes this time. We're in the Syrup Village Usopp storyline, his introduction. So in this place, love the start. I love the beginning. Literally starts like a couple of years ago. Starts with Usopp as a kid, yelling, terrifying everyone, pirates, pirates, everyone run. Starts doing the thing, but then immediately loops again to the bell ringing with him doing it again, and then it just starts going like a very quick, like super quick but effective montage of just how often Usopp did this shtick. And so demonstrating how the villagers went from, oh no, terrified, to could not take him, could not care more about what he has to say or what he's implying, and just their lack of reaction to anything he says. And it's just very, very cool addition, because we do get that later on in the anime, like this version of him when he freaks out, and we do get a flashback confirming why he does that. But it's just a nice touch in this version to have the montage from the beginning, so we, the audience, understand what's going on and why people are reacting that way. So yeah, that's the beginning. After that, we also get the scene with them on the ship, the first tree, Luffy, Zoro, and Nami, and just ship sinking. Seems like Nami might have lost her tiny communicator. I didn't talk about that in the second episode, but she has something like a micro Denden Mushi for her to, I'm assuming, talk to somebody from the other arc, and in this episode it got drowned in water, so I don't think it's completely lost, but obviously she's not going to be able to use it for a bit. That's probably going to affect her ability to communicate, which will likely pay off in some way later down the line. So indeed, that's again an interesting setup to have her be limited in her ability to reach out. I think I saw that one. There. Sorry about the random sound. So that's the first part, and then immediately it's like the scene again with Luffy showing off his horrendous attempt at a Straw Hat, Jolly Roger, and then even them poking fun at like when they're like, it's like Straw Hats can be cool. It's like Demon sounds cool. Headgear is not intimidating. Luffy's like, why does headgear need to be intimidating? Why do pirates need to be scary? And they don't really like. They kind of look at Zoro and Nami look at each other like I think it might be for them to be like, is this guy for real? But at the same time, I like to think that they are, to some extent, genuinely questioning that assumption, like why pirates are expected to be scary, because it's all based on the assumption that they are trying to be. Anyway, and there's a part, this will pay off in another part too, where it's after when they're looking for their new ship, and Luffy's the one to actually like hesitate and be like, whoa, we're not stealing a ship. And then Nami again kind of questioning, it's like, what kind of pirate are you? It's like, but it's a part of this personality. It's maybe a bit more emphasized than it would be in other parts, especially since it can, you can argue that's kind of inconsistent with his other versions, but again, that's very debatable, because at the end of the day, Luffy, for all his casual loose morals, quote unquote, he actually sticks pretty close to standard common decency attitude. And again, it's important because I think the show wants to emphasize it's specifically with getting the ship that he's playing by the honor system. You know, like, I think that's a good way for the, if they, maybe it doesn't come into play in the live action, but maybe that's just a nice way for them to, like, have a safe blanket. Like, we're not saying that Luffy's opposed to stealing in general. I mean, he just stole the safe from Morgan, so they're not trying to dump, you know, like, retroactively retcon that. It's more, when it comes to the ship, he's not okay with stealing it. And again, in character, I think that does actually make sense, even if it doesn't really have anything to do with how it plays out in the original. But anyway, that's the setup for getting the ship. Big change to the live action. Syrup Village is, like other places, but especially more so in this one, is might as well be a city, not really a village. You know, I get it, there's probably a village outside, and this isn't like a metropolitan, you know, modern day city. But, you know, this place compared to the manga and anime version, where it's just a couple of houses in the vast, you know, normal plains European village style, this is a city. And so, you know, I just think that's an interesting choice of difference in architecture. I think it's just a nice, because it gives more diversity to the cities and also gives us, the viewer, more to look at. I appreciate that. I don't think too much was lost with the whole small village thing, really, outside of maybe like how it might contrast later with the Grand Line, but that's not here or there. In the introduction to Usopp, I like the way they introduce his attachment to the going married. Not maybe deliberate, but simply the fact that now he has a much more direct relationship to the ship, and it'll probably carry over into his semi, you know, carpentry ability, like later on. Again, he's not actually a carpenter here. Like, he even like does that where he gives a super technical definition of what his job is, and then Zoro just cuts through the technicality and just says what he does on a literal level. So I don't know if there's a term for it on ships. Yeah, when I heard it, I just said, oh, he's a janitor. Like, important job that not a lot of people respect. Myself included, usually. I try to be better, but I do get where the stereotype comes from in fiction. So anyway, it's Usopp's dealing with that, but then, of course, set up to him meet Kaya. Another big change, and again, for me, a positive one. Her mansion, way more impressive and way more detailed. A lot more, you know, we get to see way more of there's more to it. There's like this vast garden. There's more to the layout of the mansion itself. There's this passing comment by Zoro where it's like, he mentions that it's kind of like a maze. I think that's more just for the sake of the tension, like especially later when the last half, where it's like nighttime, you know, the architecture and the overall layout just feeds into the whole tension. And I like that they stuck to Kuro's design. Like, biggest difference, I don't even recall if he even went by a different name in the other versions. Like, because here I always remember him as Kuro, but it makes sense that he'd give himself a different sounding name. You know, he doesn't, you know, it wouldn't make much sense to be like, I'm not this guy that he just shows up and it's like, hi, my name is Kuro, no relation. Like, again, I might be overthinking this. I don't know if it ever played up anything in the other version. But yeah, we have him, but he sticks to the original. Like, he even has the two poops in his jacket. They didn't take it off. They weren't like, that's too silly. No. They kept it. He still does the fixing of his glasses with his hand gesture thing. Even with as short a time as he's going to be in the story, they made a point to make sure he does that. They did add the shift again, which is a shift from the original, but at least here it doesn't, I don't think it's going to play off like in the second episode, where the lack of crew at the end just kind of limited people to fight. I think here, yeah, they are limiting numbers, but they are keeping more. You know, it might have been a case where like he didn't have anybody with him. It would have just been him. That would have been a problem. But here, at least, he's got two henchmen who snuck in with him and are on working as butlers and so on and so forth. At first I freaked out because I thought the big guy was supposed to be the sheep dude, and I was like, wait, what happened? Why does he look so different and kind of, nasty? But it's like, but now that's just a new guy that they added. Also the girl, I'm bad with names. The new pirate members. I wonder if they're meant to be like the equivalents for fighting, or if they're just here for, to do the sneaking around stuff. Again, in carrying with the more bloody not bloody, but just they're not afraid of like showing graphic stuff, in loose terms. Having the sequence where Kuro sneaks up behind the guy and just straight up stabs him with it, possibly to death. He might be alive in following the trope, but in this version, I wouldn't be surprised if they genuinely wrote him out of the story. And along with changes, the decision to change some of the setup might be just to make Kuro's plan A, less convoluted, and B, more less convoluted and just more straightforward. They just decided, it's better if he's just here to take the money, and the plot is there's no this convoluted kidnapping hypnosis part. That might still play out. I'm not saying it won't. I'm still in episode 3, so it hasn't finished. But they're adding stuff to make up for the things that they are changing. So, speaking about that, the stuff with Kobe and Garp, I don't know the term for the board game they're playing. I know what it is, but the name escapes me. But interesting choice to like have that be the way that he and Kobe bond, and the way that they develop sort of like the dynamic and his personality. Like the idea is that he's trying to get Kobe to be a bit more aggressive in his personality. So it's like aligning that to a move in a game, but meant to represent sort of like the approach. I will say this version of Garp comes off as much more of a dead serious guy. There's still part of his casual demeanor, but in contrast to his other counterparts, he just comes off as way more dead serious and professional. Like I said, I'm still not sure how much of that is just the live action wanting to tone it a bit down for the presentation, and how much of that is a genuine like shift in how they want to portray the character. So, because in lieu of Zoro, Nami, and Luffy, and Usopp, but he just got introduced, so it's harder to tell with him. With the other three, you can tell more of their actual attempt to keep their personalities from the other versions, because you've got Nami's, immediate mentality. It's like, I'm gonna steal this place. She's a lot less gleeful about it. Like I said, it's part of maybe their toning down of their eccentricities in the anime and manga, but still, I'm glad they didn't remove that, because they want to keep her, fevery. There's that last part at the end where she puts back the thing from Kaya. Again, not entirely out of character for her, because at the end of the day, she's not really about the money. But it's one of those, like, again, like, would she really be that hung up about taking stuff? I mean, especially considering what she does to her. No, sorry, I'm not gonna mention that. It's like a spoiler. Sorry, but hopefully you know what I mean if you've seen the story. It's like, wrong button. Keep forgetting how to do this. Sorry, so it's the interaction with her, and then the stuff between Luffy, Usopp, and Zoro. There's a great scene where it's like, first, Luffy and Zoro and Nami are in the wardrobe room. I already mentioned Kaya's house. Like, might be a bit over the top in terms of how much color is in there, but again, I prefer that over the bland mansion style it had in the other versions. So it's a very colorful place with a bunch of clothes to pick, and it's like, Nami's trying to like pick something. He's like, how do I look? And then Luffy's like, you look like Nami. Like, she's getting nothing out of him. Zoro walks in. It's like, what are you gonna wear? It's like, something in black. It's like, edgy. It's like, I do like later that even though he did end up wearing a black jacket, I like that at least the middle has more color to it. I was first worried, it's like, is he really gonna wear all black? I know that's a thing, but he's not that, bleak in his color scheme, from the series. I like that when Nami gave him something with a bit more color, he wasn't like, they gave him something with a mix. It's a nice excuse to like get him to change wardrobe. I wonder how if they're gonna find ways to do that in the next episodes as time goes on. Because that's in the story, it's like they just find ways of like changing wardrobe between arcs because, again, they don't want to be wearing the same thing over and over. That gets boring pretty fast. So it's a nice touch giving them a change of clothing and putting it into the story as an actual event. There's the part where, in the dinner scene, there's the part where Luffy just unapologetically just does the whole "I'm a pirate" shtick. You can clearly tell, like, even though it's absurd and, so blasé about it, Kaya, in her self-awareness that this is kind of insane, is actually, like, I don't know what the right word for it, but simply, you can tell there's a part of her that respects and admires Luffy's, like, sheer glee and sheer commitment to a dream. No matter how crazy or, quote-unquote wrong it might sound, like, she appreciates that at the very least. And it's more the fact that Kuro's the one that's bothered by it that, cuts the scene and creates the awkwardness later. And paid off with kind of like I didn't even mean this to be a pun, but like the on-the-nose stuff later when Usopp and Kaya are having two separate conversations about their relationship, and sort of like the "are you together" shtick vibe. Like, that is sort of a thing, we in the fan base also kind of presume. And again, not a big deal, also none of our business, and it doesn't really go anywhere. But I get it, and at the same time, I feel it's like one of those, it makes sense, but it also feels like it's here just to be a cheap joke. You could argue it's there to, like, develop Kaya and Usopp's personalities, but again, it's one of those, I get what they're going for, but in almost any other story, I see it as a bit of a forced conversation, and I don't see it any differently here. Again, it's just not a big deal, but that's just how I felt. What I did like about it, though, was just the way it got set up, which was Luffy and Zoro going to the kitchen because Zoro wants to get booze, for lack of the right word, and Luffy just wants steak. It's a nice touch because that is an important thing that it's sort of like a running joke for those two in the other stories, and I like that this version keeps it. And even if it's toned down, it is actually part of their personalities. Same as how Nami, still tries to steal stuff, even if ultimately she, gets a nice dynamic with Kaya and decides, alright, I'm gonna put it away. Same thing with that, in that it makes sense. It's a nice scene. I don't know if it's like forced in the sense that it's just they needed Nami to not be anywhere else, and so they just decided, we're gonna have her have a girl scene with the other female character there. That's a thing. I know that's a real life. Women hang out with women. I know that's a thing. I don't know it because women don't talk to me, but I get it. I just mean that it does also land on that. Did you just write a scene with the two girls to just talk because you didn't really have anything else for the two girl characters to do? And again, you could kind of just spin that around a 180 and argue that the scene with Luffy, Usopp, and Zoro is just the exact same thing. And as I said, for me, it's when it gets to the whole couple joke relationship commentary, it's silly on both accounts, so it's not like it's a gender thing for me. At least I don't think. Sorry, minor ramble. And back to the Kuro thing. This carries on a thing with Buggy, in that it seems that the live-action version likes to lean more on the scary horror aspect of the characters in the One Piece story. Because we had it with Buggy, with the dark aesthetic of his circus. And here, we have it. In this version, we have it with. Sorry about that. Got caught off by a phone. Then the dynamic. I think it was the interaction with. Sorry, the villains. The thing with Buggy and now with Kuro in this episode, they lean more into the we're meant to be kind of scary, personality. I have to wait and see for the next episode if they lean into the comical part of the villain when, they start like losing or start getting messed up by the hero. I still have to wait and see how Luffy versus Kuro happens in this version. And how the overall fights happen. With the addition of the other storyline with the Marines. So those two things might clash. And speaking of the villain, the added sequences with Buggy. This is especially interesting because it has Buggy continue to be relevant to the story, which carries over from the other stories, but deviates almost completely from the how and the why. So in this scenario, Buggy is now getting attacked by Arlong because Arlong is basically doing the I'm the biggest guy in the setting, so you need to pay your respects if you're gonna do crime in this area, which is in keeping with his personality. And the way Buggy reacts and deals with the situation is pretty much in character. It's only a matter of how is this going to pay off, because it's like if this is a way to keep Buggy in the story relevant, then how is that gonna connect to the rest of the story? This is explaining a bit more of like why certain characters may or might not appear. I forget how often this happens. But yeah, like having that interaction with Buggy again I don't think it's one of it's a change, but it's not a matter of it's a change so it's bad. It's more a question of where's it going, because ultimately the interaction between him and Arlong is pretty much what you could expect. I like the added touch of when Buggy references the One Piece, which I don't know if he ever talked about. Arlong ever really referenced that in his part in the story, but I like how he makes it about, he puts the fisherman perspective on it, his twisted perspective on it. So that's a nice addition in this part. Still raises the question of, like I said, how this storyline connects and how it kind of is meant to follow through with the original premise. It's another missing here. Oh yeah, the Buggy thing. It's how Buggy, whether this means that Buggy is going to play another role in what remains of the live action version. He takes a bigger part in this version, or if this is just a way to set up the next villain while still keeping Buggy in the story. Again, because of the reasons, relevant, spoiler, not going to talk about it, but it makes sense that he's here, still relevant. Oh, and when Kuro and Arlong, now there's two, I definitely noticed it this time, and it's definitely intentional. The characters actually react to the wanted poster that pops up on screen. That was very funny. Now that I finally realized it's actually intentional, it's like the wanted poster shows up, and then they do something to it. I like how Arlong is literally just tear into it like a shark. He just mauls it, and then Kuro just swipes at it with the claws. So it'll be it's a very creative way of bringing that into this version of the story. It'll be interesting to see, really, how they do that with everyone that comes after, because there's a lot of characters that can have that bounty poster thing show up, and it's just fun to imagine how each iteration reacts to it. And I think, aside from, I think everyone's already mentioned it, I don't have much of a different opinion in regards, I need to see more of it, but the Going Merry looks cool. At the same time, because I'm used to the other version, it looks scary a little bit. Nothing crazy, just it looks more... When you think Sheephead, that image doesn't immediately pop up, and when it does, you're like, okay, ironically, that is actually a pretty cool design, even if you were thinking of it as a pirate needs to scare people trope. I don't really see it, again, like, it's just gonna boil down to, I see it a few more times, and I'm gonna be like, nah, it's cute, it's charming, I don't get it. But that's a lot of people already brought that up, and from the ones I saw, and that was pretty much my same reaction. It's like, huh. The funny part where it's like he sees it, Luffy has that very touching moment when he's like getting ready to hold it, and the moment he does that, it's like Usopp talks. He's like, "You can talk," carrying on the idea, like I've mentioned it already, but carrying the fact that while it may be toned down, the writer and these writers are aware that Luffy's kind of an imbecile, and that isn't like something they're just... And so yeah, that's episode 4. I think that's most of everything. Again, it's not this... I don't want this to just come off as a full-on attempt to just review it. I'm genuinely just trying to speak my mind, give my thoughts, blah, 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 blah. And we'll see in the next part what happens from here. Now I'm just brain lost as to what episode it's going to... Anyway, see you all in the next one, whichever episode it is. Take care.